Breath of Fire is one of my favorite series of RPGs of all time, which is one of the reasons that it was the very first series that I reviewed in its entirety several years ago in the game collection. It was a series that I thought was long dead, but recently, and I don't know if you know this or not, but Capcom has hinted ever so slightly that they might be interested in reviving the Breath of Fire franchise. This got me thinking, it's been a little while since Capcom has made a Breath of Fire game, and a lot longer since they've made a really good one. And since you're listening to fans now, Capcom, I'm glad I have your attention because I made this video just for you. These are 10 things that we need in a new Breath of Fire game. Now first, this is kind of a big one, so listen here, Capcom, don't make stupid decisions. Now, I know I could end this video right here and now and call it a day, but recent game trends and developments have shown me that some think tanks are so disconnected from reality that they do need this to be spelt out a bit more. This has got to be a single-player experience. I know right now, Capcom, it's got to be pretty tempting to want to make this a online game, always connected online and maybe some multiplayer experience, or heaven forbid, a mobile MMORPG. Capcom, no. Don't. And do I even need to say it? Capcom, put your phone down for this part. No. And I mean no gotcha. Breath of Fire at this point is a classic RPG series that deserves some gosh dang respect. So before you even start trying to put your own little spin on this game, trying to tweak the recipe or anything, first, I want to make sure that you even at least know how to bake a regular cake. For now, just stick to the basics. Because let's face it, if a new Breath of Fire game does get announced, there's a very good chance that it won't go perfectly, which is why I always say to hype responsibly when you hear news of something like this in the works. Temper your expectations and never be disappointed again. And if you missed the first print run edition of the Hype Responsibly t-shirt, I have some good news for you because they are back in stock and they have a nice new ice blue variant that you can actually get, as well as the SuperDerek logo tee that I'm wearing right now. They're super comfy and are made by my literal actual good friends Dane and Ash, who just live here in town. That's a company they've been in business for about 1 year. They're just a couple of cool people who just love making cool designs. And I'm super excited to be working with them on these shirts. So check it out over at shop.superderekrpgs and get yourself some pins maybe while you're at it. Number 9, bring back Ryu and Nina. So this is going to sound like it could have been included with number 10, because that would have been pretty dumb, right? But now I want to shift focus on bringing back the awesome, and Ryu and Nina were the awesome. We need to make a return as playable characters, both of them. Now, to seasoned veterans of Breath of Fire, this should sound like an obvious choice, but to fans who know a little bit more about Breath of Fire 6, they know not to take this for granted. The ill-conceived and ill-fated Breath of Fire 6 was a freemium web-based action RPG on iOS, Android, and Windows Phone, and in it you get to play as Ryu's brother or sister. To me, that'd be like playing a Legend of Zelda game and getting stuck playing as Link's accountant. Lame. And while we're talking about Ryu and Nina, let's talk about their dynamic for a minute, because Nina is a badass Windian princess who saves Ryu just as often as Ryu saves her. In Breath of Fire Dragon Quarter, her wings were clipped, and she was sick and frail, and let's not ever do that again. Ever. And in fact, this would be a really awesome time to bring in the option to maybe play the game starting off as Nina, playing the game from her perspective as she acquires Ryu into the party and not the other way around. Furthermore, going from 2 games where Ryu and Nina have a romantic relationship to a platonic relationship to having a love triangle in 4 felt a bit weird. I think it'd be pretty nice to be able to give the players the choice and the agency to try to pursue a romance option with Nina or Ryu, or not. You know, and maybe other characters. That could be interesting. Consider that one for bonus points. Number 8, on a related but different note, give us a full set of 3 or 4 party members in combat and a full set of party members to switch in and out of the back row. Breath of Fire's front and back rows let you switch out characters on the fly. It was so good that even Octopath Traveler stole it. But Breath of Fire was the OG, the original game that made it a staple of the series. Being able to strategically bring people in and out of the lines of fire to act as human, equestrian, avian, or turn up meat shields or glass cannons was indispensable in combat as it is in designing a new Breath of Fire game. That means we need 6 to 8 playable characters total, and each of them should have some sort of nice special ability, just like old time's sake. Whether it's Nina's ability to fly, Gobi being able to swim, Karn's ability to find traps and pick locks, everybody needs at least some unique ability outside of combat. And number 7 is going to go a long way toward inspiring how this should all work out. Breath of Fire from the start has been a series of worlds filled with anthropomorphic humanoids, and I can't help but feel that that is a huge part of what was lost in a couple of entries. And that just won't do. Cat people, wolf people, dog, fish, bird, and mole people deserve a spot in the spotlight. Okay, maybe not mole people if it hurts their eyes, but I do think you get the point. If you're going to make a Breath of Fire game, Capcom, it can't be just a human-centric story. In fact, I think it would be a really interesting subject to be explored further in depth in a game, and this could really tie in nicely to some rich traditions of each party member getting a well-developed story arc of their own. Number 6. Combos. Other games call them dual techs or triple techs or unite abilities, but in Breath of Fire 4, Capcom introduced a combo system where party members could cast synergistic spells or attacks that were compatible with other abilities that could combine with one another during a round of combat into something even greater than the sum of its parts. It was a relatively recent addition to the franchise, but it's something that I think made the combat of Breath of Fire 4 so dang satisfying. Number 5. Breath of Fire has long had a reputation for having some excellent music, with the very first being composed by none other than the renowned Yoko Shimomura. She loved working on RPGs so much that she actually bounced shortly thereafter to go work with Squaresoft, where she would go on to work on Super Mario RPG and eventually Kingdom Hearts. Who knows, maybe if Capcom made more RPGs, she might have stayed. While her work was, and still is, excellent, the composer who really worked their way into my heart of the series was Akari Kaida from Breath of Fire 3. Akari Kaida was the source of that jazz influence that you heard throughout the entirety of Breath of Fire 3. That funky bass line, the xylophone melodies, they're no small part of what made Breath of Fire 3 feel like a sophisticated modern RPG decades before anyone realized just how cool it really was. Number 4. Breath of Fire has always been gorgeous. The vision of its art style was pretty well solidified by Tatsuya Yoshikawa, who did the character designs for several Capcom titles in their heyday, including Breath of Fire 3, 4, and 5. Tatsuya was actually still finding his voice during the development of Breath of Fire 3, which is why you might notice that the art for Ryu and Nina and others was drastically different in-game from the art that you would find in the game's manuals and other publications. Tatsuya actually redesigned the characters after the sprite work was already done, which far more closely resembles the actual earlier designs. In Breath of Fire 4, though, Tatsuya had a clear vision from the start, which resulted in the best-looking Breath of Fire game, in my opinion. Making a new Breath of Fire title without him just wouldn't make sense, and it wouldn't feel right. Number 3, which ties nicely into the fact that we need a return to form with the series to implement some isometric angles into the game. And honestly, this one is key, and it was a huge part of Breath of Fire's identity from its inception. The original Breath of Fire title was, to be completely honest with myself, a decent game, but it was perfectly average in most ways. One of the few things that it had going for it that really helped it stand out was that fantastic battle screen, which was presented in an isometric drop-down view. Breath of Fire 2 kept that incredible combat system and made it even cooler. Next, Breath of Fire 3 said, screw it, let's make the whole game an isometric game, and it gained a legendary status in the process. Finally, Breath of Fire 4 took on that revolutionary concept of allowing players to revolve the camera around the party. Because of this, some of the best and strongest memories that Breath of Fire fans have are tied to that beautiful aesthetic. It's all part of what Breath of Fire is. This time around, Capcom, I need you to bring back that pixel art on a 3D plane just like the golden age of RPGs. Give us an HD 2D experience that we know you can deliver. We're seeing incredibly talented RPG developers do some incredible work in similar veins, and they're doing it on shoestring budgets, Capcom. How about you treat the new Breath of Fire game like an indie game, but give it an actual budget? Make us a modern-day 32-bit PS1 RPG with all the bells and whistles, huh? That would be awesome. Number 2, and this one's honestly just for me. I don't know how many other people out there really are as in love with character fusions as I was, but to me, these were incredibly fun and overpowered ways of helping make their least favorite characters into something incredibly unique and useful again. Character fusions. In Breath of Fire 1, Karn the Thief was able to fuse with a handful of different characters in order to create super beings with incredibly high attack power, agility, or just looked super cool. In Breath of Fire 2, you could do something similar with shamans in the game. I didn't really care much for Gobi the fish or the mole dude, and Karn was cool, but he was weak. But it was in the late game that you were able to fuse 4 or 5 party members in together to create the ultimate life form, Puka, who literally just screams at doors in order to open them. It was incredibly satisfying. And it is doubly important because you pretty much have to find ways of making your other characters super strong when your protagonist has to have the most incredibly OP ability of them all. And that brings us to number 1 Capcom, Dragon Transformations. Give us real dragon transformations, none of that Dragon Quarter stuff that you're too afraid to actually use. Let Ryu go on a dragon rampage. This is a series called Breath of Fire, based on the titular fire-breathing dragon protagonist Ryu, whose name literally means dragon. So, over the series, there have been several iterations of dragon transformation systems, some of which were freaking awesome, and some of which were less awesome. But in all of my years of talking about Breath of Fire, every single fan of Breath of Fire loved the mechanic of gene splicing in Breath of Fire 3. This mechanic allowed players to find genes out in the wild that impart elemental attributes and various stat or form enhancements such as speed or becoming a behemoth. Mixing and matching 3 different genes would provide you with a wide array of different results. You never knew what you were going to get, and that was incredibly fun, Capcom. Bring it back. Breath of Fire isn't going to become the next Final Fantasy, starting with whatever their next game is. It's going to take some time for Capcom to find their legs again, I think, and until they do, there's honestly not much need to do something incredibly revolutionary for the RPG genre. Instead, what we need is the Breath of Fire-shaped hole in the industry to be filled. So Capcom, why not just fill the game with all of your greatest design choices from all of the best Breath of Fire games? I want you to write us the Breath of Fire love letter that we all deserve. But what do you think? This was my top list of features, but I know that I can't speak for everyone. So if I missed something that you want to see included in a new Breath of Fire, let Capcom and I know down in the comments down below. And if you're new here, please be sure to get subscribed because I'm SuperDerek. I make thoughtful and thought-provoking videos for gamers who love RPGs, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a great day, everyone.